On this week's Bet the Process podcast. No Rufus, sadly, or not sadly, sadly. But we have Ted Knutson on, and Ted is he's an old friend, founder of Statsbomb, soccer expert, gives some pearls of wisdom as it pertains to decision making, soccer, all of that, and it's a good conversation. So stick around. And we're also brought to you by Novig, which is the best sports betting prediction market in the world. If you want to go there at novig.us and use the code BTP, I'm sure you've been hearing lots about prediction markets, and you're going to continue to hear lots about prediction markets. They just closed some major funding, and we're shortly going to have Jacob Fortinsky, the CEO, on the show to talk all about it. But go there and use the code BTP and you will get a bonus. So with that, let's start the process. Welcome to another episode of the Bet the Process podcast, one that starts with a guest because Rufus is gallivanting around Hawaii, living his best life as he does. We have dear friend, Ted Knutson joining the podcast. Ted hopefully needs no introduction to this group, but former Magic player, former early Pinnacle trader, before trader was like a cool term that everyone says with prediction markets, ran a soccer team more or less and got them elevated, like the dream of, he was Ryan Reynolds before Ryan Reynolds was Ryan Reynolds. And then went and started a company, sold it for a bunch of money, and now is just gallivanting around the world eating really good food. No, he's actually doing lots of cool stuff that we're going to catch up on. So Ted, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to see you again, sir.
Is that the best intro that you've ever had? I mean,
it's pretty good.
It's got to be in the top, right?
Ryan Reynolds before Ryan Reynolds was doing soccer stuff. That's great. Never going to be as attractive as him.
Rob guy that nobody knows who he is. That Rob guy?
McElhenney?
Yeah, that Rob guy.
Okay, that guy. Rob.
Yeah, that Rob guy. How is Wrexham doing? Are they doing well this year?
Surprisingly so. Their metrics are sort of like mid-table, and they've gotten a bit lucky, but recently they've been taken up, doing a little bit better. I won a bet on them last night, which has been very unusual this season. So there you go.
That you want to bet on them, or that you want to bet?
That I want to bet on them. Okay. My betting this season's been good, although mid-season's a little grindy, but had a horrific start last year, had an awesome start this year. So it happens.
Where do you think you get your alpha in betting football?
So that's been really interesting. Basically, so I have this newsletter that I write, Variance Betting, and I kind of do analysis and give my picks on the English Premier League, English Championship, which is where Wrexham are, and the UEFA Champions League. And I've been in this industry for like 20 years. And back in the early days, you got your alpha by using models. And nowadays, you get your alpha mostly by realizing where models are wrong, which I find fascinating because like this is sort of a full circle thing where like everybody's like, oh, the model's better than anything. It's like, well, the model has these big holes inside of it, and the ones that the gambling market seems to use are mostly the same. Therefore, when something deviates from that, then you're like, well, this is huge advantage for me. I'm going to hop in.
Do you find those edges to be quite large compared to a model's edges typically?
These days, yes. Back in the old days, no. Like the model
how do
was
you
just
even quantify
so far.
that if you're not necessarily? How do you try to quantify that?
Yeah, basically, like so when I'm looking at something and I look at the model these days, and we've already hopped into sort of detailed nerddom. I'm like, okay, so
this is a nerddom podcast. Right?
I understand.
Language.
This is why it was so hard for me to get you guys on camera. Like they're like nerds. No. When I look at the models, I'm like, all right. Oftentimes it's like frequency of bets that are available to me, like purely from model bets. And sometimes you've got a different sort of decay function on it where you're like, okay, we're faster than this because we know things have changed or are more chaotic. So that's like the first basis. And the English Championship, especially this year, used to be my best league by far for 20 years. And now I'm looking at it and I'm like, I'm just getting like 3 bets a week as opposed to, 8 like you used to be able to get because it's much closer to the model lines. So now you're looking for more derivations off of that.
Okay, so when you say the decay or I mean, essentially this is the whole like is someone's longer term performance or metric more indicative of short term, and who is overreacting or underreacting, right? Is that kind of a little bit
Yeah,
what you're talking
that's
about?
pretty much what it is.
So how do you in that situation have conviction around, because the market is almost always going to price more long term, right?
The initial gambling market lines will price more long term. That's correct.
So does the alpha come when the market overreacts to something, or does it come when the market is not reacting quickly enough, or is it just a mixture of both?
It's both sides of it. Sometimes it's also not. So there'll be times when injury information comes out, and it's obviously public information, but no one wants to touch it until close to lineup. And you're like, no, this is definitely happening, but no one's moved the lines. And so being able to quantify what injuries look like and then how significant they should be versus the backup and stuff like that, it's pretty standard stuff for the last 20 years. But now the model's like much more in tune with what you would generally say, this is closer to the line. Now we have to make sure that we're betting the change in that as opposed to the actual model projection.
It's kind of like risk arb in mergers, right? You're basically saying like this is likely, and the market has to price some uncertainty that is not uncertain necessarily, or they misprice that uncertainty. Like the Costa, the guy that did Darko,
Yep.
he's, that's his world, is like it is risk arb or pricing like and it's like it's fascinating to me to think about the parallels that we are now really driving towards in the financial world.
Yeah, and those guys make 10% consistently because the market is just like, well, we're confused. We can't fully price anything in. And their job is to try and find out as much information as to which way this is actually likely to go and then profit on either side of it.
Do you watch Industry, by the way?
I watched, I think, for everything but this season. I haven't gotten to
Oh,
this
you got
season
to
yet.
watch the season. The season's a banger. I mean, last season was amazing. I thought, like, especially towards the end, but this season is some of the best in my mind, television that I've ever seen. It's like I like don't try not to drink on Sundays so I can be like completely coherent when I watch it, because otherwise it's too, well, I'm like, I watch in bed before I go to bed, and I told you I'm an old man. I go to bed around 8 o'clock. So it's, like, not my guilty pleasure is to sit in bed with my iPad and, while the kids are down, and watch Industry. That's what I live for. That's
So
what my life has been boiled down to.
you bet like 4 or 5 sports, right?
I mean,
How
I
many
don't
sports are you involved
really
in?
originate anything anymore. I tail some stuff. I move or tail some college basketball. I don't bet any NBA. I have over the last couple of years bet baseball.
Mhm.
I don't. Every year I go into the baseball year saying I'm not going to bet baseball because it is a grind, right? Like
It's the biggest
you
grind.
talk about a grind. It is a grind. And then I literally met someone the other day. Yesterday I did a call with him. He's a listener to this podcast, so he'll probably hear this. And he's from, like, I don't know if you heard the episode that we talked about simulations. And Rufus kind of like shit on the idea that there'd be people that are better at simulation techniques, and like really it has to do with the inputs and all that kind of stuff. And this
Mhm.
guy kind of reached out to me and said, actually, I don't agree with him. And he's in some research world where he's an expert in simulation. That's what he does.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how he gets some alpha in very small market sports. And then I kind of taught him a little bit about baseball, MLB baseball, and he was essentially like, "Yeah, I mean, I've looked at it. I'm interested." So anytime I hear that, I'm always like, "Oh man," to get, because like baseball is a sport that you can probably grind your book out for a long time, and they're never going to kick you out. And even
Mm.
if you just have a tiny edge over the course of the season, it's going to make basically preserve a lot of your books for the college basketball stuff, where we're just, our edges are so big that we're just crushing these poor college basketball people.
Did I tell you about how when we launched Japanese baseball in Pinnacle ever? Have I told that story?
No, sounds like a
Okay,
great
so
story.
So I fell out with Monty, who, if you're ever looking for somebody interesting to read about, his name's Stan Tompchin. He died a couple of years ago, and he's one of the few people in the gambling industry like I deeply hated, even though he was my boss for a long time. I loved Henry at Pinnacle, and Monty was just like this horrible individual, but he's also a former world backgammon champion. And for a long time, he was quite good and he gave a lot of money to charity, etc. So I fell out with Monty, and basically I stepped back from all the things that I was running at Pinnacle at the time. And I was like, well, what am I supposed to do now that like they've sort of taken things from me? And Henry's like, well, why don't you run Japanese baseball? I was like, all right, fuck it, I'll do that. So I was opening lines at 5 p.m. UK time, and then I would go to bed at about 9:15, so still later than you. I would wake up at 2:30 in the morning to then finish the trading, and I think it ended at about 5 a.m. UK time. Sometimes it ended at 10, depending on when the final games sort of kicked off. I would open the lines at $50, and the thing that's freaky about this is we would open lines at $50. We were doing research on Japanese websites. I remember going to Japanese Yahoo, which was not translated, and trying to look at the pictures and make sure that we knew who the pitchers were. But we didn't have locked pitchers on this sport, which, if you know anything about betting baseball, knowing who the pitcher is is extremely important. And in American baseball, like if the pitcher changes, then all the lines are invalidated and you restart the betting on the game. We didn't get a chance to do that. So we're doing all the Japanese research and we're trying to figure out, like, is this valid or not? So I would go to bed at the point that I popped it up to maybe $250. So we took like 3-4 hours of action up to $250.
But do you have
Go to
auto
sleep.
movers on that? So like if someone multi-pops it, it just moves automatically?
So we had auto movers that was pretty high. And then I would hand it off to just somebody to like keep an eye on, but they weren't like real traders at the time. And then I would come back and I would trade it. And then by the time that we were a couple hours away from post, like it would be 2,000. And it was a 4% line, which was much bigger than Pinnacle stuff, 16 cents wide still. So minus 108 versus minus 110. So still better than Vegas odds on the fact that I didn't have pitchers and I didn't know the sport really on that side of it. I knew baseball. I still held 1.6% on the season, which like some of you are like, oh, whatever. Like, dude, if you don't have pitchers and you've only got a 4-cent line, like 1.6% is outrageously good. So yeah, that was
how did you end up getting on something like that, like on a game?
You know, I think a lot of times between 10 and 20,000 was probably what we had. Like maybe like a really good game would be up to 40. So like nothing special, but you still get enough to grind out a pretty decent win.
And how much at that time were you guys getting on like an NFL game? Or actually like a soccer game? Soccer is probably bigger for you, right?
Well, soccer has a lot of arbitrage volume in it at Pinnacle. So like a good soccer game just on the handicap would be like 1 to 1.5 on the pre-game, and then live has its own sort of flow on it. NFL was probably 2.5 million per NFL game at that point.
What do you think it is now?
Oh, I'm going to guess at least a 5x on it, but it's hard to say because like things get segmented and they have a high roller space that stuff gets out of. So slightly different structure now.
Do you have any general macro views on what's happening in the US right now?
My general macro view is everything is bad for US customers. It feels like if you had to pick the worst
what
possible.
About the prediction markets? That seems good, right?
Are they still overcharging everybody on the prediction markets? It feels like if you're a winner, then you're getting gouged.
When you take money out or when you do commission or whatnot.
Yeah, and like if you're an originator, you might get a chance on it. But everything that's ever happened in the prediction markets means that all the whales that are there get gobbled up by the sharks. The sharks end up paying premiums for, like, this is how Betfair used to work. It's how Matchbook used to work. Like, it's very hard to make that a sensible space.
Interesting. So you would sell you'd sell the Kalshi valuation at $100 billion.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'd be more interested in DraftKings and Flutter than Kalshi. Unless they found a way. Like if someone like Yas came in and said, "Okay, I'm going to run this correctly, and we're going to do it in the way that I want it to be," then I get that. But it doesn't seem like that's the way. Or if he's doing it, like maybe if he owns enough of it, he's getting good prices and everybody else isn't. But
yeah, so he owns part of Kalshi, or what does he own? We're talking about Jeffrey Yaz, who's the founder of Susquehanna right now, and who has been a guest on this podcast. Shockingly, that we were.
Yaz is awesome. We met him in person. You guys did a podcast together. Like I'm a big fan, And he was somebody that did seem like he was espousing that it should be much more like stock markets, like it should be low juice effectively for
Yeah.
everybody that's involved, and you find the best prediction prices of everything there. And obviously, he managed to put his money where his mouth is internationally, and he's waiting for U.S. regulation to start to make sense. If he ends up sort of bigfooting this into a sensible space, then that's awesome. But I haven't seen any indication of that yet, so I am inherently skeptical.
Yeah. So we're sponsored by Novig, which is a sports betting prediction market. And I think next week or soon thereafter, we're going to have their founder, Jacob Fortinsky, on. Rufus plays squash with him. Rufus would try to throw that out because it's important to the story. Um, but what would you want to ask him in terms of the business model? Meaning, like, there are in the U.S. right now, obviously, Kalshi, Novig is pretty big in sports. Obviously, there's poly markets. Shane Copeland, I just saw, is going to be at MIT at Sloan.
Hmm.
So, and I believe Nate has a financial interest in that. So, I'm guessing that he'll likely be on a panel with Nate, but who knows? And it'll be interesting. I think to see what happens in the U.S.
I think my question has always been when you get to all the fees and at the end of all the fees, look at that in Vegas lines in the United States. And are you better than Vegas lines after the fees? That's the simplest question because you can win as a professional gambler against Vegas lines and the VIG. Like that's an established thing that's happened basically since forever. You can't win at 9% juice. You certainly can't win at the SGP stuff unless they're very wrong and you found correlated parlays inside of it. So can you get better than minus 110 after all of your fees? If so, then this is good for customers. And if not, then you're charging more than Vegas. And what's the point of you?
Well, I think the point would be more liquidity, right? I mean, I think the more opportunities to bet. I think the challenge, especially like if you think about the fact that some of these prediction markets are having prop betting, like the idea that you can get more money on prop betting. I mean, Rufus said he got, I don't know, like $4 million of volume on call sheet for the Super Bowl, right? And it's a lot.
That I understand that as a market originator, like that makes sense for
But it
Rufus
can't
to
it
be able.
can't so so I would push to you and say, okay, there is like the recreational better.
Mhm.
There is like the borderline. Okay, so let's segment the market into dumb whales and is this better or worse for them? Then there's just like the recreational, have fun, bet, anywhere up to $100 on a game kind of thing. Then there's the, probably slightly advantaged gambler, right? Like the one that's, has a system and then there's like the Rufuses, the real professionals, right?
Mhm.
So if you segment that population, it I guess what I wonder is if you get to the Rufus level, the fact that he's able to deploy so much more capital now, even if the margins are slightly smaller, I would argue that it can still be better, even if you're not beating minus 110 anymore.
I think that's probably true for Rufus, but I think that is irrelevant for the bulk of the customers. And so when I say is this better for your sort of average standard bettor, that's my question. As a market originator, like did Rufus pay big fees on that? Like has this market matured so that they might cause him big fees if he wins a lot of money? That's an open question. But I see your point. I don't disagree. Like being able to get down a lot of money when you have an edge is probably the most important thing in gambling. So yeah, as a professional, that's great.
Yeah, interesting. Um, do you have any prediction about what happens? I mean, obviously, like everyone's been talking about consolidation for a while, but then all of a sudden the prediction markets have kind of really, like there was like almost like a lull in US gambling where, I think okay, fine. If you were to like characterize sports betting in the US, I would start with like the early was just like land grab. So
Yeah.
like literally just, getting licenses, opening states. The next was margin. So the evolution of same game parlays, essentially, which is just like how do we extract more money from these people because our cost of acquiring customers is so high.
Hmm.
And then there was almost like this lull. And then prediction markets have created this interesting, almost like new opportunity. I guess also there's probably been like there was also like the chapter of DFS companies like kind of like parading themselves as sports books or parading themselves, I guess, as DFS, but really being sports books, like the underdogs and the prize picks of the world that are essentially
Right.
creating like these parlays that so it's interesting because essentially the last and then there's prediction markets. And so the last two chapters have been about regulatory capture or like the opposite, right? Like avoiding regulations.
So sweepstakes is sort of involved in that middle bit as there. And then the other thing that's happening sort of underneath the water is the PPH buy-up. So like that's been a lot of the paperhead things have been like micro bookies that existed that are outside the regulatory framework. But somebody came through and they scooped up the bulk of them and put them all in the same software. And that's been an interesting sort of sub theme of the
Tell me
gambling
a little
market.
bit about that because this is the first time I'm hearing it. And we probably should explain this a little bit to our crowd because this is interesting. So there is a gray market in sports betting, right? And I don't say black market, I say gray market, which is basically PPHs, which are it's an established, it's been going on for a long time, right? Which is like and it's what bookies use and explain the ecosystem of a PPH and how that works.
So effectively, I'm going to use this in the most general, understandable terms that people have. So it might not be a perfect analogy, but you've got your local bookie, and your local bookie has 5, 10, 100, 1,000 customers, like whatever it is, and they like to bet on stuff. And a lot of times, this is still just the oldest school of mom and pop type things, where they're recording your bet in an Excel spreadsheet, and that's how it gets there, and then they know what it needs to be settled, etc. Do they use actual currency? Are the numbers real? Are you paying via crypto? Like, are you paying via sacks of potatoes? Whatever it happens to be, that is sort of on the edge of the regulatory framework. What happens when you start to accumulate all of those is that you then kind of usually have sort of the agent system that exists above it. And this is the way it existed in Asia forever. So you would bring in these Asian agent packages inside of the Pinnacle framework or the CRIS framework or whatever. And they're like, okay, yeah, so on average, we've got this package and these guys bet 100 million in volume a year. And you're like, this is great. You get this percentage of the losses of those customers. We will host all of it on this secondary agent framework. You can white label it if you want to, and then it just rolls up. The bulk of that volume rolls up into Pinnacle or into CRIS or into whatever it used to be. These days, it's much more diversified. It's much more electronic, but it's still the same sort of system where like you've got many people that are out there that they've got their local networks. Maybe like Bill Simmons used to be a guy who had a very, very interesting network. And it wasn't that I'm saying Bill ever was involved in this, but if you got in touch with like Jimmy Kimmel, Adam Carolla, everybody that was attached to like the Bill Simmons ecosystem back in the first days when he moved out to LA, you'd be like, that looks like a great package. And the reason why I mentioned that is because one of the 3 Pinnacle founders was named George. Do you know of George inside of the Pinnacle space?
I don't.
George is fucking magic. George is amazing. He was my favorite person that I was involved with outside of Henry. And George would show up and he's probably like 5'7", and he's like gregarious and he knows everybody. He's very friendly. The type of guy that definitely frequented the Playboy Mansion on a regular basis, but partly for business reasons, because it turns out that George was the bookie and drug vendor to all of Hollywood in like the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. And we used to think that the stories that George would tell would be absolute bullshit. Like he'd be like, oh yeah, I know this guy, I know this guy, I know this guy. People name drop all the time. It's crazy how much I know you. I didn't want to say it, but Jeff just raised his hand.
You're looking at me? Sorry.
Jeff's real in his name dropping though, and so's George. But the reason why we know this is because one of the chief marketing people at Pinnacle was in Toronto. He lived in Toronto half the time. And George is like, hey, I want you to meet me at the Rogers Center. We're going to go to a concert. It's like, all right, cool. I'll go to a concert with George. George is good fun. It's like, meet me at this back door here. And George always ran late. So he's running like 15, 20 minutes late. Allie's like, I don't even know if George is going to show up. Shows up, knocks on the door. Bouncer looks at him. Like, all right, you're good. Checks the list. Comes backstage. Walks into the Eagles dressing room And the Eagles all give George the biggest fucking hug, and they're so excited to see George. At that point, every single story that George ever told became true.
Okay, so back to this Bill Simmons package. Let's not like so there is so that package included like a lot of people in Hollywood, you're saying, and got it.
Yeah, and that's kind of how these PPH books work, except for with less star power, right? So you roll up 50, 100, 200, 1,000 people. You're like, hey, I get access to Pinnacle prices or like maybe Vegas prices when you're in California where you can't get anything good. And then you just keep track of it and you settle it however you can get away with legally or illegally. And that's how.
How of those the PPHs? So PPH days stands for paperhead, and they're basically like the front end random bet 2K, bet someone, bet whatever it is, right? Like there's all these random URLs. With those like random like uh, websites and URLs, how many actual like how many actual like books are there? Do you know what I mean? Like who's actually like do those all roll into four different books, or are there
So
how many actual people are taking risk on those, you think?
So that's the interesting story. It used to be kind of a normal amount, but then you get these backstops. I mean, it used to be completely diversified. Is what I'm saying. But then suddenly somebody realized that there was value in aggregating them, much like PE shops do, and they go around pick up all the dentists in the area or the
Yeah.
veterinaries in the area, whatever. Like if you can find a way to pick up a lot of the PPH across a space, then like you can get actual leveraged returns off of it.
But that's a weird world though, right? Like, you're not like your private equity funds are not getting involved in that world, right?
No, because they don't want the regulatory
So
capture. But
do you have any guess who's doing this, and like what's the scale? How long has this been happening? How do you know about this?
I know about this because I have some connections in the gambling industry. I don't know the exact scale of it. I know some of the names that we would talk about, but I'm reticent to get myself in further
Oh
trouble.
no, I don't need names, but I'm just curious about like how. But it makes like as an entrepreneur, it makes total sense, right? And I wonder, like again, like when you think about the Pinnacles and the Bet Chris's and the Bet 365s of the world, and the challenges that they're having entering the U.S. and whether they're going
Yeah.
to be able to enter the U.S. Like, there's probably going to be a moment in time where people just start casting a blind eye to this, and they're just like money's green, and like we got people in here, and so
Like how long did Bovada exist in an illegal space, right? Like, it was, like 12
I was
years.
shocked at how many people that I know that still bet on Bovada. Like I didn't even know it was still a thing. Like it's like people say they bet on Bovada, and I'm always like, you must be a really good bettor if you still are betting on Bovada.
Or really
That is
bad.
incredible. Okay, let's go into a little bit of Statsbomb, the story behind that, and really just talk a little bit about that evolution of sort of like soccer, football, and like obviously in the lens of what we tried to do at Crawley Town, and I don't know if you heard Preston's podcast on Risk of Ruin, which he kind of like John Reeder like brought him on, and it's a pretty fascinating story because like you followed it, you saw how many things we did wrong, but yet we still succeeded in many ways until we didn't, right? Like we got elevated in 2 years, and
Yeah.
arguably like if we had and I think the biggest lesson is that the hardest reason so and this is like the theme of my life right now, right?
Okay.
Change management in any industry, change management in any company, change management in soccer, right? At your level, and then even change management. And what I mean by this, and Ted, I saw you immediately like perked up because you got it. But it's really hard to get people to think differently about something that they've been doing for a long time, even though we all know that with the advent of data analytics, and now everyone, this is the first time that there's really been a core technology that I think everyone has been like, oh, I got to figure out how I incorporate this. No one's really saying AI isn't real.
Right.
right? Everyone's saying like it is real. It's going to change things. Derek Thompson wrote a really good thing on this, which was the whole like nobody knows anything thing, because like that whole Citrin or whatever thing came out, and everyone's like
Citrini.
freaking
Yep.
Citrini, and everyone's
Yeah, two
freaking out
two
about
different sets of science fiction stories. No one
it. Yeah.
actually knows what the reality is. They're just projecting things into the future. Now,
Mm.
what you and I have done historically in our careers is make projections and predictions that have largely come true. Not always, and you're going to lose a lot too. But when you get the big ones right, that's a pretty big deal. My company that you're talking about, called Statsbomb, like the prediction was that soccer would go towards a Moneyball environment in the very near term. And so started in 2017. By the time that it was sold in 2024, we had 300 football or soccer teams around the world that were using it. But the last 3 years of my life were about a different football, and we produced our best product there. When I sold the company, because the shareholders and the investors didn't want to continue on and wait another year, we had 6 teams in the top 70 of the NCAA that were using our American football product, which is by far the best product in the market. 1 year later, no different product. They had 67 out of 70 that were on that. It was like timing is
Huddle
just going
did.
to kill you. Huddle did.
Yeah.
67 out of 70 of the top NCAA teams
That
because of
is,
the transfer portal.
yeah, no, but like you, so there are a few people that I know that predict the future. One of them is my friend Kevin Compton, who was the owner of San Jose Sharks, and I call him like my second dad, my personal mentor. He always predicts the future, and he says these things. And you predicted the future there. You literally said, I remember you saying to me, like, with the transfer portal, this is just going to become more important. And you nailed it. So was that so are you just kicking yourself now about that? Or I mean, it is
Nothing
what
I
it
can do about
is.
it. It is what it is. Yeah. So live betting was one that we did, like different types of sports betting back in the Pinnacle days that people would want access to the Walmart of sports betting. And then soccer turning Moneyball. And then college football in particular needing to have data because of the transfer portal. Like all those things like sort of lined up. Now they're not very different predictions, but it's fun to see the future a little bit. Set pieces is another one that we got right in soccer. Like the Premier League looks like we predicted it. Daryl Morey actually sent me a message toward the early part of the season. He's like, Teddy, I cannot believe that like all the things that we were talking about in 2016 on stage like have happened in your sport. I was like, same thing for basketball and you, so it's no different.
I mean, Daryl just calculated that three was greater than two. I mean, let's not overplay Daryl Morey's contributions to basketball. Just
Sorry.
kidding, Daryl. Love you. You're not going to Sloan, are you?
I'm not. I forgot about it because I've been busy with team travel. I'm running 2 women's football teams and actually rebuilding 2 women's football teams, which is extremely hard. So like I've been busy on the team travel space, and I was like, oh my God, when's Sloan? Oh, I'm gone. So sorry about that.
Yeah. Bummer. You're going to miss a wonderful dinner.
But you were saying predictions and seeing the future.
Yeah. Sorry. We were just like lapsing into thinking about A5 Wagyu cooked on a stone and seeing.
So literally when you messaged me, I was like, tomorrow I need to send Jeff a message because my 50th is this year, and you had a very nice 50th birthday, and you invited me, and I missed out on it. But it's going to be at EMP, small dinner. You're very welcome to come along. Duck is back on the menu. Meat is back on the menu, and we'll make sure that there's some pappy there as well.
Can I ask a dumb question? 11 Madison Park. Got it.
That's correct.
Oh, got it. It took me a second. 11. I was hoping it was 11 Miami. 11, right? In Miami,
Yeah,
obviously.
I do.
So it's kind of like funny, the 11 thing, because you haven't probably followed this, but the U.S. hockey team was there, and there's all these viral videos of them singing the national anthem at 11 and celebrating. And there's been all of this like ridiculous political stuff about their call with Trump and like overreactions and politicizing everything. And the funny thing is, this video that everyone's so happy about, they're like at 11, which is, someone's like, oh, I can't believe they're a strip club. And people are arguing about whether it's a strip club or not. It's like, it's
Club.
hilarious.
It's Miami. That's what that place is.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a club. I've never been, but what I've heard is it's like a club unlike any other club you've ever been to. But it is a borderline strip club, isn't it? I mean,
Are we assuming that I have firsthand evidence of this? I'm offended now. How dare you?
You lived in Miami for a little while. Like, I mean, if I lived in Miami, I certainly would have gone there once. I got no bones about that. Like I mean, I've been to a gentleman's club in my life. That doesn't make
No,
me like,
no, I'm not a fan. I'm giving you a hard time. But my life in Miami was very much I would get up to do a run at 5:30 a.m. and I would see all the people coming out of these clubs so that I could then go down to the college football team and then in bed with them for 10 hours and then come back and run my company. So unfortunately, I did not get a chance to. But yes, I am very
well,
aware
maybe we
of.
should take a PJ from EMP to 11. So that's well, when is that? Because I will put that on my calendar as I will go for sure.
Late September. I'll send you when it is.
Just send me the date. Yeah,
Yeah,
because I'll build some business. I mean, late September is like a wonderful time to go to New York. So
that's exactly right. That
I'm
was the
definitely. Did
plan.
you already have the res and everything?
Yeah, yeah. All booked, deposit paid.
So
Off we go.
who else is going to be at this dinner? I feel like it's going to be.
Hopefully some ringers from the Pinnacle days, like my college roommate, friends of mine from all around, tax lawyers, people involved in
I've never been there before, and
games.
when I tell my oldest son James that I'm going there, he's going to freak out because
You've never been to 11 Madison
I
Park?
haven't. I haven't.
Wow.
I think I've only been to like I don't know how many 3 Michelin star restaurants I've even been to. Like so when I was this is a great story about my son. This gives you a glimpse in him. There was like a Sunday night where he and I were alone, and it was week 18 of the NFL season. So it was like, I'm like kind of watching the games, but also it's like painful to watch the games. And I'm like, James, we
Hmm.
got to do something. He's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, let's go to dinner in the city. And he goes, can we go to a 3 Michelin star restaurant? And I'm like, no, we can't just go to a 3 Michelin star restaurant. Like it's not like walk-ins at these places.
What are your children raised as? Oh my God.
I know it's well, I'm going to on his birthday, which is March 24th. On March 25th, we're going to Friends Only, which is like the test kitchen of Akiko, and Akiko is like this amazing omakase restaurant in San Francisco. And this place, Akiko, Friends Only, sounds amazing. So I'm very excited to go. We have a 5:30 reservation because that's what you do when you take an 8-year-old to omakase. So, anyways,
And when you go to bed at 8 o'clock, it's a big deal to get the early res. I got you.
I
Have
mean,
you been to Single Thread yet?
I haven't. I haven't.
Okay, sorry. You told me we were going to talk about restaurants, and now we can drop names like nobody's business because, like, I love restaurants, you love restaurants. I'm very passionate about food.
Yeah, we both are obviously, and I think the thing that you opened up for me that I like love is that the sake thing because like when we go to Japanese restaurants, I feel like you crush the sake ordering. Although I think like I don't know how much difference there really is in sakis, but like I like because I've been told that like a lot of it is the purity of the water, and
Can
that's
be.
like yeah. So, but you probably know better than I. So I don't want to talk out of turn. Okay, back to this. So single thread is
Yeah,
probably one of the top, I would say, 15 restaurants in the world because it's one of the only 15 restaurants that has 3 stars and is also has the Grand Spectator Award. So it means it
it's
has one of the best wine lists and it is a 3 star Michelin restaurant. Tell these guys a little bit about it because I've never been. It's only an hour away from me, and I've like never been, which is sad. It's a sad
so.
thing.
Let's see. Keller's Place and Single Thread. I was trying to do
French
this when
Laundry.
I, yeah. So French Laundry and Single Thread. I was trying to get both of them back to back in like a 4 day period after I sold my company. So my intention was, I was told you have to take a break after you sell everything. So I went with my ex, and I got into Single Thread, but then like the French Laundry things got all booked up, and I didn't realize if you wait like 15 minutes, like most of the bots would drop their things, and you'd still get a chance to do it. So I did it like in the exact minute that you needed to. But Single Thread was outrageously good, and it was, it's got sort of a fish forward emphasis.
It has an Asian. It's got a Japanese Asian influence because of
Yes, absolutely, but
Kyle
fusion.
studied.
So they do all sorts of stuff. Also, the one of the two owners there did a stint at yeah,
Kyle. That's Kyle. Name drop.
yeah, and so at
Or
the
no,
Fat
maybe
Duck.
it's the other one. Sorry, it's a husband wife. Sorry. Anyways, I'll let you finish the story. I can't be
Exactly.
on brand if I don't interrupt you.
It is a husband and wife, and we got to meet them and tell them how awesome it was. But it also has the biggest bottle of Chateau Yquem that I've ever seen in my life. And I asked them, like, how in the world did you get this? And they said they actually ordered the wrong size bottle of Chateau Yquem. They ordered a full case of it by accident. And this was like 15 years ago. Chateau Yquem got very excited. And they're like, this is amazing. We've been waiting for people to take this allocation of the giant bottle. And they're like, well, now that we have it, we can't not take it. And so it comes out with just this overly large bottle of Chateau Yquem that I didn't know could possibly exist. I was like, how much does that bottle cost? And what is the security you have on your wine cellar? And he's like, yeah, so I think this is about a $25,000 bottle of Chateau Yquem. And we had to do a lot of insurance and a lot of diligence on the vault, which is literally what they needed to do to store all this amazing wine. But if you ever get a chance, I've been very lucky to eat it so many places, most of which I paid for myself, but sometimes, I'm on Jeff's budget, around the world. And it's the best time with people. It's an awesome experience. If it seems like it's outlandish in the price, it often is, but it also creates stories for the rest of your life. And that's one of the things that I love about it.
You went to Cyrus, right?
Yes, Cyrus was fabulous. And not only did I go to Cyrus, but I now get a Spherix allocation because that wine that we got from there is so nice. And so,
Yeah,
yeah.
so Cyrus is a restaurant up in Geyserville, which is next to Healdsburg, and it's a restaurant that I'm an investor in. And the Somm at Cyrus is this awesome dude who's actually named Cyrus, but he's not like, you think of Somm, you think of like, I don't, have you watched, are you watching Drops of God, or have you watched Drops of God?
It's on my list. I have not seen it yet.
I just started watching it, and it's I don't know, wine is amazing. So anyways, we can leave it at that. But Cyrus is not a he grew up in Hawaii. He's not like you would think like a Somm is pretty stuffy and old. He's like this young dude and just has like awesome. I think the thing about wine that people the reason I love wine is I don't think it's supposed to be stuffy, right? These are like
No.
farmers that grow shit, and like they're in love with what they do. And somewhere somehow someone taught, I think, the United States that it needed to be stuffy, and it's not, right? And so anyways, okay, food, 111 Madison Park. Let's get back to soccer. So back to
Okay.
football. So you sold Statsbomb, you went through this whole issue, and now you're back into soccer. What are the things that you have like noticed as someone that kind of was on the sidelines for a little while, specifically as it is around trying to find alpha at the team level, which I mean, like we always talk about alpha at the betting level. We talked a little bit about that, but at the team level, how much has actually changed in the last, what, like 10 years roughly?
So there's three spaces where sports and data kind of revolutionize sport. Like the first one is always, can we find better players? And that happens because that's where you spend all your money. So like, automate, like making things more efficient in that space is super important. The second one is playing style. So that's like Daryl's threes and dunks. In soccer is, take better shots. And then, can we high press in certain circumstances? Now it's, can we transition better because they're facing an unset defense, and set pieces. And set pieces was the one that like we're kind of notably early and taught a lot of the Premier League how to do it. And then the third one is the one that baseball started like 10 years ago, which is once the player market has found an equilibrium where you can't just pick up dollars that are sitting on the ground all the time, how do we create better players? And that's the one that soccer is just barely getting started with, especially on the men's side. There's still some of the first two on the men's side as well, because soccer is a big diversified thing that happens over many different languages. And lots of people that are still running football or soccer teams that, were educated in the academy system, which isn't necessarily the MIT, Harvard grads that came over and took over American sports. So I think that that's kind of where it's at right now. The very top tier teams are really sharp and really smart, and the rest of them, meh. And as you said, change management is the biggest deal. When you replace your coach, or when you have to replace a bunch of people that go on to make lots more money elsewhere because they were smart in your space, how do you do that in a way that doesn't really set you backwards? That's a constant problem across all sports, but even more so in soccer.
So this idea of player improvement, I think, is fascinating because this is a theme that we've been talking about really since we had Kyle Bodie on the podcast. I don't know if you know what Kyle is, but yeah, we had him on, and
I've known Kyle since he was a teenager.
Really?
Yes, I used to edit his Magic articles. He was Ohio based, and then since he started Driveline, he and I have talked a bunch. I asked him over a decade ago. I think it was 2014. I've got messages from when I said, "Hey, Kyle, I'd love to look into a long throw program with you guys. I'm sure that you can figure out the biomechanics of this." And he said, "Let me get back to you." And then obviously he just went full into baseball and was too busy.
Yeah. Well, you should still work on the long throw program because I feel like that is still a hack, right? And then
Yeah.
the reason it's a hack, so you guys don't know, is there's no offsides on throw-ins. And so if you can throw the ball long, you can basically create a lot of havoc in the box, right? That's the theory.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm fascinated about this because not to be all Bill Simmonsy on you, but I'd love to talk about my Boston Celtics. So Missoula spent a bunch of time with Pep. That's like one of his main guys. So would Pep be someone who is good at player improvement? Because I like what's happened with the Celtics this year. Have you been following this at all? They don't have Tatum, right? Everyone said, "Oh, this is gonna be a gap year." They got rid of Drew Holiday. They got rid of Kristaps Porzingis, and they didn't have Tatum. So they literally lost three of their stars,
Hmm.
and they are the number two team in the East right now,
Yep.
and they are killing team. Last night they didn't have Jaylen Brown. Now, granted, the Suns didn't have Booker, but they killed the Suns in Phoenix with essentially four, G leaguers and and Derek White and like I'm guessing so much of their success has to do with player improvement, right? Like these
Sure.
guys that are like they're like, oh, Baylor Shireman and Hugo Gonzalez and all these guys that people thought wouldn't amount to anything have been awesome. Um, do you would you? I'm trying to figure out how to get a question out of here, but like, is that are there organizations that you are watching both in soccer and outside of soccer that are mastering this?
They're just getting started. Like honestly, some of what we're seeing now, I think for the first time in ages, is it feels like players are hitting the ball more true and more on target than they have before. Which one of the gaps in sort of the expected goals model is goalkeeper reactions. Right? If somebody hits the ball at you harder, you have less time to react and you can't get there as fast, and so you're more likely to score a goal if basically they have higher shot power. And golf is one of those sports that you obviously know that had a very iterative feedback loop. Oh, once we got technology involved, then we could say, hey, you hit this shot in this way. If we change your grip a little bit, or if we change, where your stance is a little bit, like we can then quickly sort of spin that up to make you hit it more true or give you less horrible snap to the right or left that you might have in your golf swing. And it's straightforward there. In soccer, it's not because you have to actually figure out the technology to be able to do it. You've got to have slow mo like the baseball guys do to see like the grip and the spin that's coming out of there. But it is something that you can start to do. And so I think that we're kind of seeing it. And a lot of the commentation is about, oh, the expected goals models are just wrong. It's like, well, there are ways that the model doesn't know these things are more likely to be goals. And if you're good at creating players that do that, then you're in awesome shape. But it's right at the very beginning of that. So I think that, over the course of the coming years, we're going to see lots of changes in how players are able to strike the ball both in front of the goal and then also in their passing.
I mean, soccer and potentially baseball seem like the two biggest sports that you could do this, right? Because you have players for much longer.
Mm-hmm.
In baseball, I think Kyle is kind of like in the Red Sox organization right now, right? Like he's
Yeah.
a big part of it. And the Red Sox GM, Craig Breslow is went to Yale, is very smart, was going to be a doctor. And it'll be interesting to see how what they do plays out because ultimately, again, like, you know, so I went to go, I took my boys to a Red Sox game in August, right? And I got the tickets from Craig and I texted him when we were at the tickets and I was like, hey, come by and say hi. And he was essentially like, can't really walk around the stadium these days. Not very popular. And this is for a team that ended up making the playoffs and almost
Yeah.
making the World Series with very little expectations. Like certainly not expectation. Like they certainly exceeded expectations. And the idea, like we talk about change management. the idea of being able to like ignore all of these like forces that are irrational. And it's not even like, I always talk about groupthink. It's not even groupthink. It's like it's I don't even know if anyone's written there must be some economic theory around being able to make decisions devoid of thinking about any of the repercussions of them. Like when Kevin Compton, the guy I was talking about, he used to do a class at Stanford for for new owners of teams. And it was like, through the business school, it's like, oh, you just bought a team, come do this class to learn about
Oh
running
yeah,
a team. And the first thing he would say in that class is, and this is, 25 years ago, is cancel your local newspaper subscription.
absolutely.
So
Yeah,
it's
don't
like,
listen to that. So as
yeah,
a founder of a business, it's very much the same thing. You'll get tons of investors that want to tell you what to do, right? But in general, a lot of the population of that investor group is going to be wrong. And sometimes they're directionally wrong, which is terrifying. So like you really have to focus. And sometimes your customers are like, "Oh, I really want you to do this. I really want you to do that." But like, does that lead me to any more money? Is like like a classic question. Does it lead me to get to the scale that I need to get at so this business succeeds? And filtering out the stuff that doesn't matter at all for actual useful signal is one of the best single traits you can have as founder, but it's hard to find.
yeah. I mean, I think a lot about this idea of, like, because I was obviously on your board, and I started a company in 2013, 2012, where a good friend of mine was on my board. And I remember feeling, and you and I talked about this. I remember feeling a little bit about like how that you were feeling, probably like how I felt, and I was feeling a little bit like about how he felt. And a lot of that is like this conviction as a board member that I know it's right, and you as a founder knowing that I'm wrong. And like
Yeah.
this idea of that like tension, that healthy tension that isn't always healthy, because like the founder is like, bro, I'm in this day to day. You hear about this once a month or once every quarter, and you're going to tell me what's the right thing to do. And I'm like, hey, I've been through this before. I can look at this from an outside perspective. I mean, Kevin, again, I keep quoting him because he's brilliant, but he once said to me, you should never do anything for your board that you don't want to do yourself. Meaning, like, your board should never convince you to do something that you don't ultimately think is the right thing.
My most valuable mentor across all the Statsbomb is Mitch Lasky. And I was lucky enough to have an hour of Mitch a quarter that I could come to him with my problems. And he would give me just the awesome fount of knowledge that he was, because he was this incredible oracle on Mount High that had been doing this forever. And he wasn't pushy about like any of his stuff. He just was like, "Hey, I would think this, I would think that. I would ask you questions around this stuff." And you were absolutely fine on this stuff too. In fact, good challenge is really important because it helps you distill the shit that matters. And this is actually true going full circle back into the betting space as well. Like when people are challenging your ideas, or when you're on a bad run and somebody's like this or that, or like, you're just always on this side, like, what are you doing wrong? Sometimes you're like, yeah, I got a gap, I got a leak. Same thing in poker, right? I got a leak on these two hands because I play them wrong. So it's not bad to have your ideas challenged, but oftentimes you have to be hyper focused on what really matters in order to succeed in any industry or competitive space.
Well, I think really what it comes down to, and again, like this started with like ignoring the fans kind of concept.
Yeah.
And the problem generally is like time horizon. Like you have to have like the same incentive structure and like decision making, almost like framework to make the right decisions with each other. Meaning, like, fans always just want to win right now,
Yep.
and they don't realize that like ultimately, again, like the problem with like a Rafael Devers is, yes, he might help you win right now, maybe, but if you get rid of him and you get more shots on goal, i.e., more players at better contracts, and you get rid of this huge contract that's probably not going to age well, it's better long term for the organization. But no, Jimmy from Brookline is not like buying into that whole idea, right? Like, so it is interesting. And again, like that's a lot of what I think Eben and Preston faced at Crawley Town. And I think that they underestimated how hard it would be to ignore these fans.
I think
Meaning,
that's
like,
absolutely true.
they Preston himself really fell in love with the fans and fell in love with the community, and
Yep.
didn't want to do anything to disrupt that fandom. And I would guess that if you ask Preston what was his biggest mistake, it was almost becoming too enshrined in that thing because he just saw it and he was like, this is their lifeblood. They saved their money all week to come to these games, and this is their game. And if that team sucks that day, you've ruined their entire week. And so
That's not really your problem, though. I have a Boston sports question for you because you twigged it on this. Do you think that Boston, as an ecosystem, as a sports ecosystem, is more likely to nowadays have those teams that nobody expects anything from, and then they suddenly outperform? Because I feel like the Pats were that this year too. Like there was very little expectation around the Pats in preseason, even though that division isn't great, but obviously the Bills are there. Like, and you've seen it happen with the Celtics. You just saw it happen with the Red Sox. Like those guys all kind of know each other and often talk to each other and are pretty good friends because like they can talk to each other because they're not the same sport, so they're not stealing anything from each other. But also you need somebody to discuss things with in an open way because it's a pressure cooker every single year.
I mean, obviously, like I know a bunch of those. They don't talk as much as you think.
No,
Zarin, I introduced Zarin to Brez, I think, over text, and I think I think Breslow is going to be very successful. I think what he's done, like since he's been there, from a process standpoint, indicate to me, and just how you articulated these three things that a team should be doing, and the third one being player improvement. This has been a theme like that we talked about when we had Michael Lewis on the podcast. He essentially said the thing that bothered him about Moneyball is that Billy felt like these guys were formed and they couldn't change or improve, right? And that was like always the piece that didn't sit right with him. Have you talked to Billy in a while, by the way? Name drop. I know you know Billy well.
I'm supposed to hopefully have lunch with him later this year, but I've not been out in California enough
You should
lately.
invite him to 111 Madison. You should just create like a funny star filled dinner. Okay. But
You can get Michael involved too. We'll record the whole thing. I'm sure this will go fine.
yeah, so back to the Boston thing. I mean, I don't think Mike Zarin gets enough credit for the success of the Celtics. He's been sort of like this constant, and obviously like Brad is getting most of the credit and Joe is getting most of the credit.
Zarin's been there a whole time.
Mike would kill me, but like I know that for saying this, but I will say it anyways. I know he's been the Joe whisperer. I know over time he's been like talking to Joe, and like he's always like, I'm a huge Celtics fan, right? So I text Mike, and he never will tell me anything. Like he's so careful to tell me anything. But I asked him when Joe, like when we were all like, well, who is this guy, and like how do we make him our head coach? He was like, he's going to be good because like we really wanted Will Conrad, the guy that's now the guy that's the Jazz. I love him so much I can't even know his name, but the guy that's the Jazz coach, because he was the other assistant, but he left because we thought we were still going to have Ime. Anyway, so and then I think this is probably a lot of recency bias because the Super Bowl was so disappointing, but I think that the Patriots were like a little bit of luck or a lot of bit of luck, and a really high end quarterback with a lot of upside, right? I think Drake May, despite how he played in the Super Bowl, is elite. I think he's going to be amazing. I think he's going to
Sure. Soft schedule, but also like the fact that they got there is a minor miracle. Nothing said that they should be there preseason.
The thing that like if you go narrative wise, you say like, oh, this was like the old Patriots, right? Don't make mistakes, play smart, play good defense, be disciplined, tackle. Vrabel bought back the old Patriots, old model. If you're cynical, you're just like soft schedule, they got lucky. Okay.
I didn't feel that though. I gave you the softball Boston question, and you're like, nah.
No, I mean, I don't. I think when you have to have like results drive narratives, but you have to have a prior before those results to really believe. Like, and I didn't have a prior that there was like something in the water, or that these people talked to each other, or there was and in fact, like the community there probably lends itself to being much harder to make right decisions because you have such a vocal community. It's like one of the few places that has still a vibrant sports talk radio ecosystem, and like that stuff makes it really, really hard to make the right. Like again, like talk to Craig, talk to Brez. He's basically like, I'm person non grata here. Like I can't I can't be seen around here. And again, this is a guy that's doing all the right things. Ultimately, like, you just need the support of your owner, the real support. So you need the owner to fundamentally cancel their newspaper subscription, not pay any attention.
Yeah.
And you need them. Um, Anyways, okay, last question. Get you out of here. What's something that you've, like, a prior that you fundamentally changed your mind about, like, in the last 10 years? So 10 years ago, you thought this, and now you fundamentally think this.
Oh man. I mean, that's probably true across a lot of the sports space because the rules get adjusted or the players get adjusted. But I'll give you one that I've already changed my mind about coming into the World Cup. So I'm going to write variance betting and we're going to do a World Cup special. And like for every sort of game of the World Cup, like you'll get my analysis and my predictions. But because they expanded the size of the World Cup, you're going to see bigger mismatches across the breadth of the World Cup. And it's going to be very, very hard for bookies to get these right on the lines. Now, the World Cup is always the best betting space ever for somebody that's a little bit sharp. But it used to be that every World Cup, like dogs, especially as you get towards out of the group stage, but early dogs and out of the group stage were the good bets. This time around, I'm terrified that the dogs are going to get their faces punched in over and over again because they made the World Cup bigger and nobody really knows how predictive this should be. So I'm super scared of dogs, even though over the course of gambling history since I've been involved, like dogs are awesome bets, like the majority of the time. So I would say that that's one that I have a strong prior, and I'm going to have to fight my own internal instinct and history of knowledge in betting to not just be all over the dogs of the World Cup.
Ted, where can people see your work?
TheTransferFlow.com, also Mixed Knuts on Blue Sky and Twitter.
You're still pretty active on Twitter?
Yeah, man. I can't. So that's where all the AI conversation happens. And so when I'm trying to figure out how to code things, like it's all there.
There you go. All right, Ted, thanks for joining. And I mean, hopefully I'll see you before then, but can't wait for your birthday. It's going to be
awesome. See you, dude. Thanks for the invite. Bye.